This is module 7, looking into drywall and the types used for different applications. So fire rated and sound rated walls. And the objective of this section is to explain soundproofing, how is it achieved, and the installation of drywall. Fire and soundproofing require specific uh, codes to be able to reach the required um, installation process. And certain places has to be um, treated differently than others. And sound travels through, of course, space. It can travel through materials, and you can deaden the sound or help it to keep from being transmitted by using certain processes of installation or materials or a combination of both. So when we're looking at either fireproofing or soundproofing, uh, the codes, the building codes, have, again, very specific ways to do it. So again, steel studs are the standard for framing walls and partitions in commercial construction these days. And the types and thicknesses of the wallboard and installation depends on the fire rating and the soundproofing requirements. So if you look at this diagram, we can see that there is drywall, the X type of drywall, and they put spacers. And these spacers are basically the studs, and there's a block wall. We can use insulation, and we can put in the um, fire rated insulation again. So again, uh, the concrete block wall certainly is rated because it's not flammable, but the more materials you have to either deaden the sound or to resist fire is important in certain buildings. Again, if this a restaurant in the kitchen where the cook line is at, where all the stoves and fryers and anything that could generate heat like ovens, um, it has to be fire rated. Other things too, in other locations like in factories where they get furnaces or other types of heat generating equipment, it must be also installed based on the codes. So fire rating is measured in hours, which indicates the length of time an assembly can withstand fire and provide for evacuation of occupants as determined under laboratory conditions. Again, using insulation that is fire rated, of course, using uh, gypsum board and putting multiple layers can help uh, in both sound or fire rating. There are different construction methods for um, party walls, each designed to meet sound and um, fireproofing standards. And for example, let's say it's a hotel that have conference rooms and there's multiple rooms. You don't want to be able to hear the sound from another room if you trying to speak and you trying to portray the information over to the participants, and but because you hear noise, it may be distracting both to the speaker and the participants. So soundproofing is again in this case very important because it's a commercial building. It has to be fire rated too, just in case as a fire breaks out. It gives enough time for people to leave the building safely before the fire can really take hold. So in this diagram, you can see a partition wall, then you can see a main wall where there's multiple layers of drywall. And usually the thickness of it will be 5/8. Fire stop is another thing that's used, not just for drywall, but for any penetration in commercial buildings. If you have a pipe like a sprinkler line going through a wall, could be drywall, uh, we use some type of fire stop. And that fire stop, or it could be a duct, or it could be anything that is used. So, fire stop is something to eliminate air from going through a gap. So it could be fire-rated caulking. It could be other materials that is used to keep air from pulling in. Because here's one thing to keep in mind. Um, if there's oxygen, fire can burn. If there's no oxygen, fire will starve itself. So fire stopping refers to cutting off the air supply so that the fire and smoke cannot easily move from one location to another. Fire stops are fire-resistant materials placed in openings between studs in framing construction. In commercial construction, fire stops closes wall penetrations. Mechanical and non-mechanical fire stops can be used. So again, it's used to slow down fires, to keep fires from spreading. So fire stopping materials are made in a variety of forms, including composite sheeting, caulks, silicone sealants, and foam, uh, moldable putty, uh, wrap strips, and spray coatings. And all those are for the purpose of keeping a fire from spreading. So building codes should always be followed when using fire stopping materials, because if it's not used correctly, it may not be able to hold back or stop a fire. Any fire stopping materials used must meet the criteria of standard, the ASTM E814 fire tests, and have a rating that is equal or greater than the hour rating of the wall or floor being penetrated. F rating and T ratings, and make sure you read that in your textbook. Um, but F ratings and T ratings are determined by the ASTM E814/UL 1479 test. So the UL is the underwriter's laboratory. The first step in sound isolation is to close off air leaks and flanking the path. The STC is a numeric rating representing the effectiveness of the construction in isolating airborne sound transmission. For example, if there's a vacuum or dead airspace, it's hard for sound to travel. However, if air can move, it will travel. So by blocking things off, closing things, it keeps air from vibrating or traveling. The entire perimeter of sound isolation partitions should be caulked around the gypsum board edges. And you can find this in doctor offices, special counseling offices, um, anything, conference rooms are usually um, insulated and isolated to keep it from sound traveling, to keep whatever inside the room, um, I would say inside that room. Sound isolation can be improved by separate framing for the two sides of the wall, leaving a dead air space between it. So the wood is not traveling, the vibration of sound is not traveling through the wood. So it's keeping it from, let's say, transferring that vibration of sound. Resilient channel uh, mounting for the gypsum board, using sound absorbing materials and wall cavities, such as insulation, using multi-layered gypsum boards of various thicknesses and multi-layers construction, caulking the perimeter of gypsum board partitions, openings in walls and ceilings, partitions and mullion intersections, and outlet boxes openings. Uh, so caulking is a very inexpensive but also effective way to help stop sound. Like I say, if you can stop air movement, you can slow down and reduce sound. Locating recessed wall fixtures in different stud cavities can also help with that process. In this diagram, we can see uh, different types of ways sound can travel. And yes, sound can it travels in straight lines, but it can bounce. It can be reflected. So by reflecting sounds, it can travel from one area to another. However, if you can slow that reflection or dampen that reflection of sound, you can help reduce it. In this diagram, it shows you other ways of construction and how you can reduce the sound or how sound can travel through different ways. Like, for example, if we look at, we use this laser, we have a box here, electrical box, but we can seal around it, we can caulk around the edges, and that will keep the sound from traveling around it. Yeah, something as simple as that. Of course, putting insulation in the walls will help. Staggering the boxes, putting some type of brace between it to keep from coming through one box to the other. Believe it or not, sound can travel through a lot of different things, but using some basic techniques can reduce it. Separate partitions. So staggered wood studs, gypsum partition placed on separate plates will provide a STC between 40 and 42. In other words, reducing the decibel level. And having it that much is quite a bit, quite a bit. Separate walls without framing can also be constructed by using an all gypsum double solid or semi-solid partition. And stills or wood tracks fastened to the floor and ceilings hold the partitions in place um, because wood will allow sound to travel better than steel. Yeah, here's resilient mounts again. For soundproofing, the cost is a little bit more, but if it's needed, um, these are ways it can be done. Again, these strips will be mounted onto the studs. However, um, it will it basically almost like a floating wall, but it's attached. But it keeps the sound from traveling through because only thing that's touching is a couple screws. It's not laying on the wood directly. So it's a floating wall. So resilient attachments attach as shock absorbers of sound through the wall or ceiling and increase the STC rating. So basically reducing the decibel transfer rate. These materials include that to help isolate for sound is mineral fibers include glass, blankets, bats. Bats are rolled out insulation blankets used in wood studs assemblies, semi-rigid um, mineral or glass fiber blankets for use with steel studs, and laminated gypsum partitions, mineral including glass fiber boards, rigid plastic foam furring strips and systems, and lead or other special shielding materials. So, oh yeah, yeah, that's one thing I didn't think about, not lead, but lead. Um, in certain offices, like in doctor's offices, especially if it's an office that have a X-ray machine, the walls actually lined with lead to keep the um, radio waves from traveling outside, the X-rays for traveling outside of the walls and through the walls. Again, attaching the walls and how we screw things together um, still structurally has to be sound. And so, depending if it's single wall or double wall, we will stagger the screws for double wall. Control joints. Uh, it should be installed in gypsum board systems whenever expansion and control joints occur in the base exterior walls and not more than 30 feet on the center of in long wall furring runs. And it should be used over windows and door openings. Um, Again, a control joint is when there could be movement in the wall and it keep it from cracking and causing other issues structurally. So again, and when it comes to control joints, relief runners can help reduce cracking in non-bearing walls. First question, what is measured by a T rating? What is measured by the T rating? Again, as we look at our readings, we can find more about that. And it talks about the thermal conductivity, the thermal conductivity. So in other words, the temperature it can absorb or hold. Each of the following is a construction method used to control noise except blank. Is it caulking around outlet box openings? Is it placing air conditioning ducts back to back? Using separate framing for the two sides of a wall? Or mounting gypsum board in resilient channels? And the answer is placing air conditioning ducts back to back. A low STC rating indicates blank. Is it excellent fire resistance, excellent sound isolation, poor fire resistance, poor sound uh, isolation? And it's poor sound isolation. So what we're looking for is a high number for the STC. So in other words, what is the difference, a change in the decibel level of transferring sound? So the higher the number, the better it is. For example, earplugs or ear muffs reduces the sound a certain percentage or decibel level. So the next section, we're going to talk about moisture resistant construction.